Hello, my friends. I'm Jessi, Moon 6, your sister in the craft. I'm sorry I've been suddenly so quiet lately. Um, I opened an Etsy shop, which has been very exciting, but it's been a bit of a learning curve. So I've been busy with that. And aside from that and the stress of the holidays, this is just a really difficult time of the year for me for personal reasons. And also because I struggle with seasonal affective disorder around this time of the year. And seasonal depression or seasonal affective disorder, which is sometimes called S.A.D, appropriate, is characterized as a mood disorder or a mood disorder characterized as a depression, I should say, that occurs around the same time every year, and I believe it is acutely due to the shifting in the climate. And to me, it happens because during the time of the year where I can't get outside as much. It's really cold and miserable. Yesterday morning, it was about 50 degrees, and we didn't have any snow. Today we have winds negative 21, I think was last I saw, negative 22, 50 miles per hour. Bitterly, bitterly cold. There might be a lot of snow. It's not very sunny, so I'm getting outside less. I don't have my garden outside to keep me busy. You know, during spring and summer, I see this connection blooming all around me, and it's still there during the winter, but it is more difficult for me to make connections to these things. I spend a lot of time outside with the flora and fauna, and during the winter, I often don't even do that from my window. So for me, that's what it looks like. But for some people, like some of my friends that live on the other side of the world, it could look like 24 hours a day of full sunshine for several weeks or months out of the year. And that kind of drastic shift in the climate can also bring on this kind of depression. So it looks very different for a lot of us. But I think it's something that enough of us struggle with that I felt like maybe I could sit down and have a talk about this, and share some of the things that have been helping me. And I think in our spiritual community, we are often left with the impression that when we're working on ourselves and we're constantly going in this upward ascension. But in my opinion and in my experience, it looks more like this for everyone. Nobody or no thing that I've noticed, at least, is in a constant state of upward ascension or upward motion. We go through these cycles and these ebbs and flows, and there's the darks and the lights and the hot and the cold, and we have to learn, kind of in a sense, to be like the trees and to learn to blow with the wind and to kind of sway as the wind blows so we don't bend and break under pressure. And it is a lot more difficult to do at sometimes than others. Where I am right now, this time of the year, is a time of rest, of slowing down. Whether there's snow on the ground or not, I've noticed the flora and the fauna are far less active this time of the year. Like I said, they're there. It's just everything is kind of slowed down. When the snow falls, it even creates this kind of a sound barrier, and it can almost be eerie at times how quiet it is right after a snowfall. And it almost forces you into the silence, and it ushers you inside, not just into your house, but into yourself. So the winter has this effect on me that I kind of tend to run from. It's the new year, right? So we're often putting a ton of pressure on ourselves to make change, to fix all the things that we felt like we didn't do well enough in the year before. I wish I could tell you that the entire time that I've been away, I've been steady working hard on my Etsy, or I've been working hard on self-improvement, or I've been constantly taking steps to somehow better my life. But there were many days that I didn't feel like doing anything, and so I didn't. And sometimes that's self-improvement. Sometimes trying to force ourselves ahead when we have nothing left to give does far more damage than it does good for us or anyone. What I have learned from this internal battle that I've had with myself, with my seasonal depression, with my own psyche, and my own back and forth with these things, I've come to discern for myself that bettering myself doesn't have to always be some constant state of motion. Sometimes being still is the required action, and that is where we find the most enlightenment. Sometimes it is taking a nap after you stayed up way too late, or it's making sure you get a full lunch after you know you didn't eat very good for breakfast, or crying on the floor for an hour simply because you needed to. And that is self-improvement still. We have to learn how to trust ourselves on this journey, and that is by far one of the biggest hurdles for many of us. So I think this is a good way to practice that. Self-care is a good way to practice self-improvement, but it's also a good way to practice listening to what you are trying to tell yourself that you need. We spend so much time on our phones that it can be really easy to go through a sense of depersonalization, where we are spending so much time interacting with the mind, engaging the mind, all while the body just sits lifeless, holding our phones. So the biggest thing that has been helpful for me in combating seasonal depression has been finding ways to get my mind back into my body. And for me, this has looked like dancing. I like to incorporate dance into my spiritual practices as well. You can use them. I sometimes will dance as an offering to my deities. I will sometimes dance as a way to build energy before a ritual or spell work. It's a great way to relieve tension, to express built up energy. It doesn't have to look pretty either. Sometimes I dance like a mad woman down here, but it is a great way to get energy flowing and to kind of clear up some of that pent up, blocked up energy. And that's something that I've found to be helpful with seasonal depression and for getting my mind back into my body. But along with that, art. Art is a great way to get your mind back into your body. I've been spending a lot of time creating lately, and I feel it's a blessing now that I have been able to open an Etsy store, because I have an excuse now to be constantly creating and working on things. Not that you need an excuse, but it feels good to just be putting the phone down and seeing what happens when I connect my mind back to my body. And it has been, again, a great way to release built up stress. It's a great way to be expressive, and it's just been a great coping mechanism for me throughout some of the hardest times in my life over the years. So art, let me think. I think I brought my notebook down here. Speaking of art, this is a book that I made recently. I found some leather at the Dollar Tree and a cheap notebook, and I made a little book. Let's see what else I had. Okay. So yoga or stretching, doing some light stretching in the morning or at night, doing yoga, anything to get you connecting back with your body. Breath work is also really good for this, doing mindful breathing. I like doing things like box breathing when I was dealing with extreme nausea, and to this day when I deal with extreme nausea, box breathing is a great way for me to, excuse me, to connect mind and body, but also to distract a bit from the anxiety and the anxious thoughts and the racing thoughts. It's a good way to calm down and to remain present. Oh, journaling. Journaling is another great way of connecting mind and body, and of kind of documenting these different periods of our life and these different times of our life. And, you know, year to year, you might find things that you may find triggering, or things that were really helpful for you in combating seasonal depression, and then you might forget about them in the year's time. And it's good to be able to reflect upon these things later in life. I've done this thing. I heard about a man who was doing this experiment, or I don't know if it was an experiment, but more just a life work or something that he decided to do, where every time he recalled a memory from his childhood or anywhere in life, he would write it down. So I've been trying to write down just like one memory a day and kind of form like an archive of them in a sense. And it's also been really cool to do the same thing with my dreams. There's so much that you can do with journaling. So I would definitely suggest that. Oh, just opening up the window when, like in the morning, if I want to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, opening up the window so I can still see the birds, I can still see the trees, and kind of trying to position myself in a place of the sunlight. They say that light therapy can be really beneficial for seasonal depression, but maybe not for those people who are getting too much of it. But if you're someone who's dealing with seasonal depression because you can't go outside as much, they do say light therapy can be also very helpful during that time. I found limiting my screen time is going to be really important for me. It's something that I've still been working on, and I'm not gonna tell you that I'm cured, but I have it all figured out. I can't speak on everybody's behalf, of course, but in my own personal observation, I am spending a lot of time on my phone. I usually notice it kind of has a domino effect with other things in my life, and usually not for the better. The last one I would mention is getting a houseplant. Gardening has been proven to be extremely therapeutic, and we can't get outside to garden during this time of the year, which is something that I struggle with. So to kind of counterbalance that, things that you can build a bond with over time. I've had my Christmas cactus for two years now, my aloe for 3 years now. So it's cool to get to form these bonds, and you can incorporate them into your spell work as well. These are just some things that I wanted to share. So I know these things aren't inherently magical, but I find that self-care and emotional and mental strength is so important to actively work on, at least for me in my practice. And so for anyone else who might be struggling, I really hope that these things were helpful for you. And to remember that sometimes rest is the necessary action, and sometimes enlightenment comes from the stillness within us. We can learn so much when we learn to listen to ourselves without passing judgment or shame, but just to analyze and to observe our inner beliefs and our inner thinking, and seeing if it is in line with where we're trying to go or who we're trying to be. And we get a lot further when we don't pass judgment or shame upon ourselves, but we just kind of watch and observe and make changes when they're necessary. So I hope that you're all well, and I hope to be filming a lot more here soon. I appreciate you all stopping in to watch this video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up if you want, and subscribe if you haven't, if you want. And until next time, my friends, take care. Mm-mm-mm.